I dined alone on my 75th birthday while my family utilized my funds to travel on vacation. I was promised a 75th birthday that would be unforgettable, an experience that I had not experienced in years. Some radiance, a touch of joy, and the opportunity to be reappreciated. Subsequently, I donned my attire, prepared my meals, and awaited my turn. Nevertheless, the events of that day fundamentally altered my perception of the people and things in my immediate vicinity. It is possible that I am aging. However, I am not deaf. Additionally, I am not defenseless. I would like to express my gratitude for your willingness to listen to me and share my thoughts. Before I commence my narrative, please inform me of the time and the location from which you are listening in the comments. I derive pleasure from your discourse. Furthermore, if you have not already done so, please select the subscribe icon. You are unaware of the extent to which it is beneficial to me. I will now provide a detailed account of the events that occurred. I had been eagerly anticipating that journey for months. My son Andre informed me in February that they were planning a distinctive commemoration for my 75th birthday. A genuine vacation, he observed. A warm location, Mama. Simply pack your elegant attire. Allow us to manage the remaining matters. I was so delighted that day that I nearly splattered my coffee. For years, I had not visited any other location than the drugstore or church. I had not visited a shore since my husband's passing. Andre declined to address my inquiry about the price. Have you not been employed for the entirety of your life? You are entitled to this. We should address it. He desired to reserve the group tickets and secure the pricing after a week by using my credit card. After a brief period of uncertainty, I placed my faith in my son. I delivered it to them without posing any inquiries. He insisted we will travel to a location in late April or early May. I once again inquired about the date of April's arrival and departure. We are merely determining the time, he continued. It will precisely correspond with your birthday. Assure me. I had faith in him. I even acquired a brand new purse that was purple on sale and still had the tag attached. I stored it near the front door. I progressively loaded it over the course of 2 weeks. I arranged my sandals from church and the sundress with a hibiscus motif, which is my favorite. For 8 years, I had refrained from donning a sun headwear. Additionally, I included my spouse's handkerchief solely for the purpose of providing solace. I was under the impression that he would be present in spirit. Nevertheless, Andre contacted me the evening prior to my birthday. He sounded as though he was in a rush while traveling. Mama, I regret to inform you that we are needing to postpone the trip slightly, he stated. My spirit plummeted. What? What is the duration? In the near future. It is possible that a few additional weeks will pass. There are only a few scheduling complications. Oh, I see. Therefore, hopefully, I will be able to see you for dinner tomorrow. A pause transpired. He replied, certainly. I would not be remiss in attending. We will undoubtedly make a visit. That was sufficient for me. I endeavored to convey a sense of dissatisfaction. After all, plans are subject to change. The pace of life becomes frantic. I assured myself that it was all right. I would at least be able to observe them. Therefore, on the morning of my 75th birthday, I rose early and initiated my gospel playlist. I initiated the culinary process by brewing a pot of fresh coffee. The menu included fried chicken, yams, macaroni, and fresh string beans with smoked turkey. I prepared a sweet potato pie from scratch, this time employing genuine vanilla extract rather than the imitation variety. I even extracted the superior porcelain from the upper cabinet, which was reserved for holidays and featured a gold trim. I prepared a table for 5 individuals, myself, his wife Brianna, their daughter Amani, and potentially Tyrell from the neighboring house, provided that they choose to deliver him a plate. My spouse used to comment that the blue floral dress I wore made me appear 10 years younger. I applied a small amount of lipstick and coiled my hair. I ignited the tall candles that I typically reserve for Easter dinner. The residence emanated an aroma of affection. I was prepared by 5. I began to experience anxiety at 6. I had reheated all of the food twice by 7. I ceased inspecting the window at 8. I was alone at the table by 9. The candles had dissolved to approximately half their height. The cuisine was served at a low temperature. My makeup was smeared. I gazed at the empty plates in front of me and attempted to convince myself that there was an unforeseen circumstance, that they had simply misjudged the time, that the infant had an emergency, that the vehicle had malfunctioned, or that the phone had expired. However, I was aware that no one was forthcoming. I lifted the fork with a trembling hand. I was unable to consume a substantial amount of food. The flavor of the cuisine had undergone a significant transformation. After consuming a few nibbles, I moved the plate aside and let my elbows rest on the table. I gazed at the birthday card I had purchased from the dollar store last week for myself. The phrase, "You're still glowing," was written in pink glitter. When I initially observed it, I found it amusing. Presently, it appeared to be a prank. At that time, I wept silently, not aloud, the type of weeping that emerges when one has been suppressing it for an entire day. I experienced a tremor in my limbs. I sat in the silence, allowing the pain to sting, and dabbed my face with the edge of the tablecloth. No one made a contact. No one sent a text message. Not even a happy birthday, mama. Around 10:30, I encased the pie in foil and refrigerated the entire dish. The candles were extinguished by me. I changed into my bathrobe. I sat on the edge of the bed and gazed at the purple suitcase by the door, which was still packed and awaiting my arrival. The discomfort in my knees was slightly more acute than usual, and I gradually lowered myself to the ground after turning off the light. I gazed at the ceiling fan as it rotated, the sole sound in the room being the gentle murmur of the blades. I placed my palms over my stomach and murmured, "It is possible that they overlooked it." Attempted to accept that assertion. However, in my heart I was aware that they had not forgotten. They simply did not arrive. The morning following my 75th birthday, I awoke to a house that was still, not the tranquil kind of still, but the vacant kind. I remained seated on the edge of my bed for an extended period, gazing at the diminutive purple suitcase that I had meticulously packed and repacked over the course of several weeks. The tag remained affixed to the handle, unaltered. A portion of me continued to harbor the hope that the voyage was merely postponed, as Andre had suggested, that it would occur on a different day, and that I should exercise patience. I proceeded with my customary routine. I cleansed my teeth, secured my scarf, and entered the kitchen in my slippers. However, the pace of my actions was sluggish, as if I were dragging my bones through a dream. I prepared a cup of tea, but I refrigerated it instead. I then examined the pie before closing it once more. I lacked the stamina to reheat the remains. Last night's dishes were still piled in the sink. No, I also refrained from touching them. I reclined on the couch, ensconced in the antiquated knit shawl that Harold had gifted me prior to his passing. It emanated a delicate aroma of lavender and cedar. I gazed at the floor for an extended period of time, my attention drawn to the ticking clock on the wall. I still had not received any calls, messages, or even a simple, "Sorry, we missed you, Mama." I clung to the faint optimism that they would contact me today. It was nearly noon. It is possible that they misjudged the date. I then heard a gentle knock on the door, followed by 3 gentle strikes. I slowly rose from my bed and peered through the curtain. Terrell was the individual in question, a delightful young man. He resided 2 doors away, consistently demonstrating politeness and maintaining contact with me. His grandmother provided him with an appropriate upbringing. I opened the door. "Hello, Miss D," he said, beaming and clutching a plastic grocery bag. "Do you have the lemon dish soap you mentioned?" I stepped aside and said, "Oh, bless your heart. Please enter, my dear." He entered the room and placed the bag on the counter. I was on the brink of offering him a cup of tea when he observed my phone on the table. "Are you still experiencing issues with your applications?" he inquired, subsequently retrieving it. I nodded. "It has been experiencing yet another bout of freezing." "Well, you are aware of my disposition toward that matter. I mistakenly press the incorrect button and everything vanishes," Tyrell laughed. "Permit me to examine." Swiping through the settings, he sat down at the table. I resumed wiping the counter to provide my hand with a task. Afterward, I detected a momentary halt in his speech. "Miss D," he said tenderly, "did you mention that your son was planning to take you on a trip for your birthday?" Slowly, I rotated toward him. "Certainly." He stated that it would be a family excursion. However, on the evening preceding my birthday, he contacted me to inform me that the event had been postponed. Why? He hesitated before he gazed down at his phone. I did not intend to intrude, he stated, but I follow your granddaughter Amani on Instagram. I averted my gaze. All right. He turned the phone around to demonstrate. Clear as day, there it was, a beach, azure water, pristine sand, and my family in the center. They were all beaming, tanned, and holding fruity beverages as they posed in front of a massive hotel pool. My son Andre, his wife Brianna, and Amani were all wearing matching shirts that read Win Family Vacation. The caption read, Much needed reset in family, no drama, just sunshine. It had been published the previous evening on my birthday. I was unable to move as I gazed at the photograph. I opened my mouth, but no words emerged. I gradually extended my arm and removed the phone from Tyrell's grasp while simultaneously focusing on it. It was not merely a day excursion, it was a comprehensive vacation, the kind that includes leisure days, elegant dinners, and resorts. I proceeded to the subsequent post by scrolling. Brianna was dancing in a sundress while holding a champagne goblet. Another image depicted Andre chuckling while holding a tobacco. Amani was even photographed displaying her new gold bracelet. I continued to browse through the photos, but I did not see any mention of myself. Not one. Tyrell sat in silence. I could discern that he was uncertain about what to say. I gingerly placed the phone down after swallowing the knot in my throat. They informed me that it had been postponed, I murmured. Said we would reschedule. Declared that they would visit for supper. I experienced the sensation in my eyes prior to the onset of the weeping. I blink rapidly in an effort to prevent them from proceeding. However, it was unsuccessful. I experienced a tremor in my limbs. In order to maintain my balance, I placed my palms level against the table. They abandoned me, I stated. They truly abandoned me. Tyrell rose and came to kneel beside me, his voice being gentle. I apologize, Miss D. I was under the impression that you were aware. Had I been aware? It is not your fault, baby, I said, wiping my cheekbones. It belongs to me, for the sake of accepting their assertions. He refrained from disputing the matter. He merely sat beside me. That is what exacerbated the situation. The fact that an individual who owed me nothing could remain with me in my distress, while the ones I had raised, clothed, and fed me ignored me as if I were of no consequence. I remained in silence for a period of time after he departed. A stirring occurred within me. I was in dire need of the complete truth. I activated my outdated computer and accessed my email account. It had been weeks since I last examined it. Andre consistently advised me to disregard it, asserting that he coordinated all billing and reservation transactions through it. However, I was able to recall a single password, which was sufficient. I entered the term reservation into the search bar. My pulse stopped when I received the initial outcome, an email from a premium resort in Cancun. Confirmation of reservation, a full week. Suite with an ocean view, add-ons for spas. All payments were made in advance. Dolores and Gwyn are the billing addresses. My credit card, the same card that Andre requested to be kept for exigencies last month. I gazed at the screen, my palms trembling. My innards contorted. They did not simply disregard me, they exploited me. They took the vacation I was promised, used my money, lied to me, toasted a new chapter with drinks, and left me to weep over frigid pie. I ceased using the laptop, repositioned my chair, and rose from my seat. I approached the hallway mirror and examined my reflection. She was not a frail elderly woman. Rather, she was a mother who had been overlooked. A woman who had been mute for an extended period of time. For the first time in a long time, I experienced an internal transformation. Not animosity. Simply clarification. A part of me fell silent upon receiving the booking email. It was not numbness, rather it was a sense of stillness, as if my spirit had paused to gather its breath. I refrained from contacting Andre immediately. I refrained from sending a text message. I refrained from throwing objects across the room or slamming drawers. That is not me. I stood in my hallway, gazing at my reflection in the antiquated mirror that Harold had installed when we first moved in. I conducted an in-depth examination of myself. I observed each wrinkle, freckle, and smile line that had been present for years, but had now curled into a more melancholy expression. However, I did not experience any feelings of vulnerability. I could sense that I was awake, Brianna contacted me the following afternoon. It was as though nothing had transpired, as her voice was saccharine and syrupy. She stated that they were back in town and expressed regret for missing your special day, Miss D, as if she had been unaware of my number for the entire week. She then stated, "Andre is going to visit and bring you something nice." I refrained from responding. I simply replied, "That's fine," and then terminated the conversation. Andre did indeed arrive that evening at approximately 6. He entered without knocking, as he had done during his adolescent years. I was in the kitchen folding dishcloths. I did not even raise my head. "Hello, Mama," he said, appearing to have just returned from the store. "This is what we brought you." A white paper bag was deposited on the table by him. The cake was a slice of red velvet from a high-end patisserie, and it was wrapped in a manner that suggested it was intended for a wedding rather than a birthday. I examined the confection. I then cast my gaze upon him. "Is that the item you brought back from Mexico?" I inquired. His smile briefly dissipated. "Please allow me a moment." Next, he gave a guffaw. "Oh, you viewed the photographs?" "I observed everything," I declared. "The beverages, the lodging establishment, the outfits, the bracelet that Imani wears on her forearm, the steak supper, the entirety of it. On my birthday." Andre shook his head and rubbed his neck. "Mama, we were under the impression that you would not wish to travel that far. You are susceptible to fatigue. That is not the information you provided. You informed me that it had been postponed," he stated. "We made a last-minute change to the plans. It was not that profound." I proceeded cautiously around the counter. I could feel the heat in my bosom, despite the fact that my voice was placid. "Andre, you utilized my credit card. Your payment for the entire transaction was made in my name." His head jolted back as if I had struck him. "What?" "It was not that way. You provided me with the card for exigencies. I assumed that you would be amenable to the arrangement after witnessing our enjoyment." "You computed," I reiterated. "You assumed that your mother, who prepared a complete meal and arranged the table in a dress on her 75th birthday, would tolerate being misled, excluded, and compensating for her own exclusion." Andre's expression was now tense and irritated. "Mama, it was only one birthday. The number of them that you have had is 74. My palms were trembling. I grasped the table's edge. "One birthday?" I replied. "It was the first birthday I had celebrated without your father, and I imagined that you might want to spend it with me, rather than fleeing from me." He grumbled and slumped into the chair, appearing to be fatigued. "You are being overly dramatic." I was taken aback, and I blinked. "Is it dramatic?" "Yes," he replied abruptly. "We did not abandon you with nothing. A meal was consumed by you. You consistently assert that you require minimal resources. What is the reason for this abrupt emergence of a significant crisis?" I took a step back. My heart was thumping in my chest. I reflected on the time when I would hold him during fevers, how I would forego meals to ensure that he could eat, how I once pawned my wedding ring to pay for his orthodontics, and how I would pray for his safety every night when he was out too late. I recalled how he would often fall asleep on my lap during thunderstorms and refer to me as his beloved person in the universe. And now he was standing before me, informing me that I had reached my limit. Informing me of my discomfort was not worth the effort. I sat across from him, gazing directly into the eyes of the man I had raised. "I am Andre's mother. Not your checkbook." He did not respond. This time I refrained from weeping in his presence. I stood up once more and proceeded to the larder to retrieve the broom. I said gently, "You are free to depart." He glanced up in astonishment. "Mother, I am required to sweep," I stated. "However, I am not fond of sweeping around items that are not permitted in my residence." He stood slowly, and for a brief moment it appeared as though he intended to speak. However, nothing emerged. He departed without exchanging another word. On that evening, I reclined on the veranda beneath the string lights that Harold and I had installed years prior. With a blanket encircling my shoulders, I swayed in my chair. I refrained from weeping, but I also refrained from smiling. I simply allowed the cool air to caress my face and listened to the cricket croon me a little mercy. I continued to harbor affection for my son. However, I was unable to undo the sight I had witnessed, nor could I undo the emotion I had experienced. I believed that was the conclusion of the matter. Perhaps we would revisit the matter at a later time and resolve it in the manner that mothers always do. However, an event was imminent that would enable me to perceive everything more clearly. I was unable to turn my gaze away this time. I did not seek out conflict. I merely required a small amount of assistance. A few weeks following the argument with Andre, the situation was more constrained than usual. I was experiencing a shortage of supplies, and the electricity bill exceeded my expectations. I refrained from the urge to despair. I had endured more severe circumstances. I simply decided to borrow a small amount until my check arrived. Tyrell, bless his heart, had informed me of a retired judge who volunteered at the community center, Nora Blake. She stated that she assisted elderly women in obtaining legal advice and assistance. "She is intelligent, Miss D," he stated, "does not engage in games. She will be to your liking." It was my intention not to disturb anyone, but I made the call. The following afternoon she arrived, a tall woman with a silver-gray twist-out, keen eyes, and a no-nonsense voice that still contained compassion. A canvas satchel containing folders was carried by her as she entered the room, wearing trousers and flat shoes. She firmly shook my hand and addressed me as Miss Wynne. "Did you require any assistance?" I replied, gesturing for her to seat. "Just a little guidance. I may need to borrow a few dollars to cover the gap. I am not delinquent in any way. It was merely an unfavorable month." She examined me with meticulous attention. "Do you object to my inquiry regarding whether or not you maintain a retirement account? Are there any savings?" I nodded. I do. However, my son has been assisting me in its management." She placed her knapsack on the ground. "And to what extent are you involved with that management?" I hesitated. "He has the login information. He is responsible for paying the expenses. Said that he would manage all the tedious tasks so that I would not have to fret." Nora leaned forward. "Would you be willing to access your online banking? Just to ensure that everything is in its proper place, we can quickly inspect it." I was hesitant to listen to her, as I was nervous about the potential for embarrassment. However, her tone convinced me that I should. I then allowed her to sit next to me and opened my antiquated laptop. I was able to access the account after several attempts. I observed it prior to her utterance. The equilibrium appeared to be off. She perused the material in silence, refraining from speaking at this time. I sat beside her, my heart pounding as I observed her features. She did not address me in a manner that suggested she was a judge when she ultimately turned to me. She articulated herself in a manner that suggested she had witnessed an excessive number of narratives similar to mine. "Miss Nguyen," she said tenderly, "your account has been depleted over the past year. We are discussing numerous withdrawals, thousands of dollars, mainly transferred to a secondary account." Everywhere I felt a chill. "That must be Andre's. He has been managing the situation." She touched her finger against a line on the screen. "Observe this: jewelry store, resort charges, electronics, and even some payments designated consulting services. However, they are all directed through his personal account, not any business account. This is not beneficial. This is a form of abuse." My larynx contracted. "He has been experiencing stress. He informed me that the situation was precarious. He is endeavoring to cultivate an entity." Nora's gaze was genuine. It was neither harsh nor judgmental. "Dolores," she addressed me by my first name for the first time, "you are not a bank, and you are not present to be drained empty while maintaining a smile." I breathed. My lips were trembling. "However, he is my son," she responded, "and you are his mother. And you are worth more than the way he is treating you. He was nurtured by you. You exerted yourself diligently. You are not obligated to give him everything you possess." I remained seated still. My hands were so tightly compressed that they were in excruciating pain. The laptop was carefully closed by her. "You expressed a desire for assistance. I am capable of providing assistance. However, only if you are prepared to cease allowing your compassion to be transformed into a vulnerability." I refrained from responding immediately. Looking down at the kitchen tiling, I reflected on the years I spent on my knees wiping those same floors. I contemplated the manner in which I maintained each receipt, how I neglected my grooming appointments in order to provide Andre with football footwear, how I never once allowed him to witness my fear when the funds were depleted. I reflected on the fact that I had to wait for a supper that never arrived on my birthday, and how the individuals to whom I gave everything used my money to celebrate under palm trees. I hope to avoid causing him harm, I murmured. She stated, "You are not. He has already caused you harm." The conversation was not concluded on that particular day. I required time. Nora comprehended. She provided me with her card and instructed me to contact her if any additional matters arose. It was completed fairly rapidly. Because the following week, Andre returned to my doorstep with a beaming smile. He intervened, saying, "Hey, Mama, I have received some positive news. I discovered a residence, an authentic fixer-upper with immense potential. I am endeavoring to submit an offer prior to its acquisition." I elevated my eyebrows. "What?" He occupied the table as if it were his own. "In order to guarantee the down payment, I require $40,000. I was wondering if you could provide me with a portion of the inheritance now, before it is too late." That concluded the matter. The air abruptly exited my lungs in a manner reminiscent of a punch. I addressed him directly. No, he did not even react. He genuinely believed that he was entitled to the life I had established. "I do not possess that amount of money," I replied. He reclined. "Certainly you do. You are simply unwilling to provide assistance." My voice was monotonous. "Andre, you have been assisting yourself. I have observed the charges." His demeanor altered. "Pardon me? I observed the resort charges, the jewelry, and the electronics. You have been depleting my account." He rose from his seat. "Did you examine my belongings?" "No," I replied with composure. "I examined mine." He sneered. "After all that I have done for you, you are now interrupting me." "You are referring to my utilization," I replied, also standing. "Lying to me, leaving me at home on my birthday while you drank and danced on my dime." "If you continue to do this," he abruptly stated, "you will be left to your own devices. Please refrain from contacting me when you require assistance." I approached the counter, took Nora's card, and gazed directly into his eyes. "I will not." He abruptly exited, closing the door behind him. As I stood there for a moment, I sensed the silence return. Subsequently, I contacted the individual who assisted me in recognizing the truth. "Nora," I replied, "let us commence." The ripple swiftly reached him. In the same week, Nora assisted me in the transfer of my accounts, the locking of my credit, and the revocation of Andre's access. The telephone communications commenced. Initially, they consisted of unanswered calls and notifications of Andre's victory. Then the messages arrived, brief and in the present tense. "Mama, we must discuss the reason for my card being declined. Please contact me immediately. This matter is of the utmost importance." I refrained from responding. I was no longer required to do so. Nora stated that the legal documentation would require a few days to be finalized. However, Andre would experience the sensation immediately upon the accounts being blocked. And he did. I pictured him in a checkout line, attempting to swipe my card, only to be informed that it was no longer legitimate. I conjured up the image of his pupils narrowing and his voice rising. I could only fathom the feeling of distress he experienced when he realized that the bank login was also inoperable. The first time in a long time, I did not experience any sense of remorse. I experienced an abundance of liberation. However, liberation is not granted without a struggle. I was arranging laundry on Saturday morning at approximately 10 when I heard the weighty thud of shoes on my veranda. The door flung open before I could even peer through the curtain, and Andre entered the room in a boisterous and steamy manner. "What is the matter?" I maintained my composure. I had been rehearsing this moment in my mind every night since I spoke with Nora. I gazed at him and replied, "You will need to be more specific." He sneered. "My business account has been frozen, and my bank application has been disabled. Additionally, the credit card I was using to pay for utilities at the gas station was recently terminated. Are you attempting to humiliate me, Mama?" "I am endeavoring to safeguard what belongs to me." He approached. "Are you truly intending to subject your own son to this?" "No," I replied quietly. "You have already done it to me." Then Brianna entered behind him. She was not dressed in her typical manner. No tight blouse, no lip gloss, and no heels. A taut mandible and a wrinkled windbreaker were all that was present. "I warned you that this was going to be a disaster," she whispered to him, but it was audible to me. Andre addressed her. "Refrain from participating." No, I interrupted. Allow her to express herself. I would be delighted to hear the thoughts you all entertained while you were enjoying beverages on my birthday with my own funds. Brianna folded her arms and turned her gaze away. Andre maintained his composure. We required assistance, Mama. The business was not progressing as anticipated. You consistently declared that your funds were intended for family. I stepped forward and stated, my funds were intended for emergencies, for groceries, medicine, and perhaps a grandchild's college fund, not for vacations, designer handbags, or dinners to which I was never invited. We intended to reimburse it. When? I inquired. After the funeral? When the house is sold? When I am gone? Andre's complexion became ruddy. Please refrain from uttering that. The heat in my chest rose as I snarled, Why not? You have already spent as if I were deceased. The silence that ensued was oppressive. His voice was venomous and subdued when he finally spoke again. You have consistently exacerbated the difficulty of situations. And you have consistently made assurances that you have failed to fulfill, I replied. You assured me that you would attend my birthday celebration, that we would embark on a journey together, and that I would never experience feelings of isolation. At that moment, I observed a change in his pupils. Not remorse, not anguish. I simply came to the realization that I was not yielding this time. He inquired, What is the next course of action? Are you planning to permanently disconnect us? I refrained from responding to him. I proceeded to the receptacle located near the dining room, extracted a letter, and placed it on the table. He inquired, What is that? My revised will, I declared. Last week, I drew up a plan. Every cent of my earnings will be donated to a women's shelter in downtown. This shelter is dedicated to assisting older women in regaining their footing after being exploited by their closest loved ones. He was taken aback, and he blinked. Are you excluding me from your will? The day you gazed upon me and perceived me as a resource rather than a mother, you severed your connection with me. Brianna was now discreetly weeping. She reached for her purse and began to retreat toward the entrance. She murmured, I was unaware that it was so profound. I believed that you were in agreement with it. Andre informed me that you were aware. I refrained from uttering any words. The truth is sometimes more effectively communicated through silence than it ever could through speech. She departed without exchanging another word. Andre continued to stand there, his mandible clenched, as he attempted to devise a strategy that would entice me back. However, there was no further commentary to be made. He eventually turned and exited, slamming the door so forcefully that the picture of Harold on the shelf shook. I proceeded to align it. I then sat down at the table, gazed at the half-folded laundry, and quietly chuckled to myself. Not because any of it was amusing, but because the sensation of strength returning to one's own bones can be akin to pleasure after a prolonged period of silence. We revoked all authorizations that he had ever claimed. We reported suspicious charges, and some were even refunded. Additionally, she connected me with a financial advisor who addressed me in a manner that was indicative of a woman who comprehended the value of each dollar she had handled, rather than as if I were naive or sluggish. Subsequently, we revised my will. I donated all of my remaining funds, assets, and property to a nonprofit organization that offers legal assistance and shelter to elderly women who have been suppressed or coerced by their relatives. Tyrell and Nora were the sole individuals I informed. Tyrell, it is true. Every week after the situation deteriorated, that youngster would visit me to inquire about my well-being. At times, his actions were as simple as replacing my television remote or delivering bread. On other occasions, he merely sat and listened as I engaged in a conversation about Harold or my prior experience stitching formal gowns for half the block. He never submitted any requests. He never believed that he was deserving of anything. Consequently, I refrained from preparing the table for spirits on my 76th birthday. I reserved the small room at the community center. Genuine cuisine, nothing extravagant, was my request. Deviled eggs, fried poultry, red beans, and lemon-glazed pound cake. I appeared resplendent once more as I was attired in a balmy gold dress. Additionally, I extended an invitation to those who had genuinely arrived during my lowest point. Tyrell was the first to arrive, accompanied by 24 flowers and a Bluetooth speaker that was playing Mahalia Jackson. Nora was the subsequent individual distinguished by her sophisticated attire and her sage grin. After that, the women from the foundation arrived. All of them were dressed in regal attire, with some carrying canes and others with their grandchildren. We shared a giggle. We executed a routine. We exchanged anecdotes and pound cake. Imani was also present. Certainly Imani. She entered in silence. There is no grand entrance. A delicate knock on the door interrupted her as she held a birthday card. Nothing, not even design, was in her possession. Not a single bracelet that is new. There is no hair that is immaculate. She appeared to be experiencing anxiety. "Grandma," she observed as she stood at the entrance. "I was unaware of their activities. In fact, I was unaware of them. Daddy claimed that you were too fatigued to travel, and I believed him. However, I later discovered the receipts and the truth. I am sincerely sorry." I glanced at her. My sole granddaughter previously served as my diminutive culinary assistant, standing on a stool and employing both hands to combine grits. "It hurt, baby," I murmured, slowly nodding. "Certainly it did." She advanced. "Am I permitted to remain?" It required some time for me to respond. I then presented her with a plate and instructed her, "Go ahead, get a piece of that pound cake before Nora consumes it." She entered the circle with a shaky but grateful expression. However, I refrained from offering her an embrace. Not yet. She would be required to recoup that amount. Tyrell offered to transport me home at the conclusion of the evening. I sat in the front seat with the flowers in my lap as the sun began to set over the roofs. He glanced at me and asked, "Is today better than last year?" "It was not better," I stated as I gazed out the window. "I was the owner of it." I devoted a significant amount of time to standing on the veranda upon our arrival at our residence. The gentle, frigid breeze felt like a blessing as it caressed my skin. I contemplated the distance I had traveled as I gazed out at the street. Subsequently, I entered my residence, donned my kimono, and prepared a cup of tea. I maintained my attention away from my phone. I did not search for a text message from Andre. I sat at my kitchen table and smirked in solitude. But it was not because I was content. Rather, it was because I was whole. I adored them. I am currently in the process of regaining my composure.